Tesla Q2 earnings call with notes. I'm Brian. Welcome back to my Tesla weekend. Twice live in a day. That's unusual for me. Maybe I have to go for 3, do something really special. How is everybody? Yeah, great. Letting them numbers sink right the heck on in. Very exciting stuff. How are we doing here? Got a few minutes. Wanted to be early because there were some things I wanted to talk about. There's this fantastic user over on Reddit, _TSLA_, who I have tagged as a guru. Non-GAAP earnings per share, which is what Wall Street uses, is even better, 227, well above the whisper number of $1.60-ish. Troy Teslike was very close again with 218, though someone later in the thread pointed out that he was right, but for the wrong reasons. When he shows the math, he had a much larger profit margin and a much smaller Bitcoin impairment. But right numbers are right numbers, hard to argue. If you're off a little on S and X and off a little on 3 and Y, but you come out to the right number, is it wrong? That's why we show our math, so you can decide. The Wall Street bastards don't do that. Fantastic quarter. Despite the production disruption, Zhizhou Berlin has positive margins. Tesla sold 75% of their Bitcoin stake. Yay! Now, I'm of two minds of this. I do believe it's risky for a company that's not in that business to be playing in that realm. And on the other hand, I still think it's good to get out of it. Oh, that's the same opinion twice? Oh, okay. I don't believe Bitcoin is consistent with Tesla's mission. I think the amount of energy consumed by Bitcoin is problematic and bad for the world. Energy storage shined, improving gross margins. Record quarter for solar installations. That's what you like to hear. It's about time. Significant OPEX reduction despite inflationary and supply bottleneck pressures. Positive cash flow despite major factory expansions. And you remember, there were headlines because Elon made an offhand comment in his Kilowatts interview with the Tesla Owners Club of Silicon Valley where he said, these two factories, Berlin and Texas, are burning cash. They are dumpsters full of cash on fire. And of course, the headline translated into doom and gloom. The company's in trouble. No, it isn't. Elon likes to be hyperbolic about the downside, which is good. It tempers expectations. Positive cash flow, despite major factory expansions, yes, down to 0.066 in non-financing debt. S&P upgrade to investment grade is now a given, in my opinion. Well, it's always been a given. The question is when? Their financials are rock solid. Edit. Official Tesla table of installed production capacity has finally been increased to 1.9 million units per year. And we know that number's low because it's saying 250,000 for each of Berlin and Texas, which is ridiculous. Let's see who we got here. Who is this? Welcome, MPAT. Yeah, you made it. Of course you did. You said you would. You told me you'd be here. That was the whole point. Who else we got? MD Hofsty, hello. Yeah, the energy numbers are insane. John's touchpad. Don't forget to smash the like. Energy numbers are legit. Hello, Doomlore. We could all do a wrap-up stream. Yeah. And who is this? Just a bunch of love. Thank you so much. Okay. So, we've got a little bit of time with the countdown. 6 minutes. I can survive. So let's see what the headlines are. CNBC, reasonably fair. Releases Q2 financial results, another beat despite tough quarter. Not bad. The Verge, the terrible, terrible Verge, the verge of news. When you want factual reporting, you are on the verge. Tesla Q2 report shows crypto sell-off, decrease in profits. That's your yank away? Really? There were some other good ones I saw. Yeah. Electrive. Tesla shows first sequential decline, but remains in the billions. Good stuff. You know what? Let's just look at this hot trash from The Verge. And I get it. You want to make money off the people who despise all things Musk, but guys, it's just gross. It's dishonest. Tesla already reported vehicle shipment numbers, and now its full financials are out. Dealing with inflation and the overall economic downturn, in its letter to investors, they revealed the company has sold 75% of its Bitcoin holdings, adding $936 million in cash to its balance. And one guy I saw said, "Why would you sell when it's down? Sell when it's up." Well, we don't know when they sold. They could be the reason that it's down. Last year, Tesla made a $1.5 billion investment. Yeah. And they only briefly accepted it, and it was never accepted really. Yeah, I should stop giving them clicks, that's true. But people need to recognize poo when they see it. Don't step in The Verge. In terms of profitability, the company is still doing better than it did a year ago, when it made $1.1 billion on $11.9 billion in revenue. Several factors: lower stock-based compensation, of course, more vehicle deliveries, and an improved average selling price. Yes. It's the first full quarter since it raised prices by 10%, and it raised prices again. So we're going to see those average selling prices likely increase. And the reason the average selling price is still so low, I think, is because there's a lot of SR Pluses coming out of Fremont going to customers like Hertz. But that's great because those use lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are not as constrained in supply as lithium ion, specifically the 4680. And remember, everyone's building 4680 plants to help Tesla. Samsung's got their pilot line going. Panasonic is building that $4 billion factory in Kansas. LG has a pilot line. Everybody except BYD, and BYD is in a separate agreement to provide batteries to Tesla in Shanghai. Culturally, it's been a turbulent quarter at Tesla. Elon sold billions to pay for Twitter. And of course, Andrej Karpathy has departed the company, as we discussed earlier, because I think he's planning to have twins with Elon, which would be interesting. And more power to him. Good for him, you know? Let's see how we're doing. 2 minutes and 41 seconds. How will I survive? Yeah, MD Hofstede's digging into the numbers now to get through them. Yeah. Watch the PC TechTuber reaction of The Verge building. Oh, yeah, I've seen... That was a good example to me of journalistic malpractice. They made a video. It was absolutely awful. Factually absurd. And rather than own it and grow from it, they started trying to get channels taken down for having the audacity to point out just how awful they are. And to me, that sums up The Verge nicely. The verge of ethical, the verge of honest, the verge of good reporting. Terrible. Terrible. Is it time? Is it time? Well, let's not get a music copyright strike, huh? I'm going to do this. When it's back, if I miss it, somebody let me know so that we don't miss it. Just trying to avoid echo and all that. And once we go live, I will hide my pretty mug so that we can just put notes on the screen. It'll be good. The person in that video, MD Hofstede says, finally accepted Linus's offer to show how to build a PC after, 2 years later. Embarrassing. Embarrassing. The problem is, terrible reporting is not punished. You'd think it would be. You would think there would be some kind of backlash from readers frustrated by consistently getting bad and incomplete news. I've heard people say, well, Elon's looking to get that that litigious army rolling, that'll shut these guys down. I don't think it will. I don't think that's the objective. I don't think that's possible. I think the problem is what they're saying is not necessarily factually wrong. It's just distorted. You know? Did you take those cookies from that cookie jar? No. I didn't take any cookies from that cookie jar. No, I had Dave spill them out on the counter, and then I took them. So he spilled them out. I took them from the counter. True. That's all true. But it's very deceptive. 591 million in new cash sitting on the books. Just keeps going up. They need to start putting it to use. They will. But when Robotaxi arrives, they're going to need something to finance it. They believe it's coming soon. I believe it's coming a little bit later than that. And when it does, they'll want the ability to roll out 10, 20, 50, 80% of all vehicles sold as robotaxis, at least for a while. That costs a lot of money, and it's tricky. For that matter, they need cash to roll out grid-scale energy storage, which they will own and profit from massively. You guys know, you've seen the video. Hello, Jamie. Glad you could join us. Paul, I'm glad you're here. Yeah. Paul says, I haven't watched that video with Linus. Linus is okay. Yeah, Linus was a first mover in the space. There's a tremendous advantage to that. Take my numbers. My numbers are consistently pretty good. There are people whose numbers are consistently bad who are vastly more successful because they were here first. And I'll get my respect one of these days. We'll see.
Joined today by Elon Musk, and a number of other executives. Our Q2 results were announced at about 3 p.m. Central Time in the update deck we published at the same link as this webcast. During this call, we will discuss our business outlook and make forward-looking statements. These comments are based on our predictions and expectations as of today. Actual events or results could differ materially due to a number of risks and uncertainties, including those mentioned in our most recent filings with the SEC. During the question and answer portion of today's call, please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up. Please use the raise hand button to join the question queue. But before we jump into Q&A, Elon has some opening remarks. Elon?
Thank you, Martin. So just as a Q2 recap, Q2 was a unique quarter for Tesla due to a prolonged shutdown of our Shanghai factory. But in spite of all these challenges, it was one of the strongest quarters in our history. Most importantly, in June, we achieved production records in both Fremont and Shanghai. And as a result, we have the potential for a record-breaking second half of the year. I do want to emphasize this is obviously subject to force majeure, things outside of our control. The past few years have been quite a few force majeures. And it's been kind of supply chain hell for several years. Credit to our awesome Tesla supply chain team for overcoming insanely difficult challenges. Huge thanks to the Tesla Shanghai factory team who sacrificed a lot to get the factory back up and running in June and achieve a record output. So also making good progress with production ramp with Berlin. We achieved an important milestone of 1,000 cars a week in June, and we're expecting our Giga Texas to exceed the 1,000 vehicle per week milestone hopefully in the next few months. To be clear, we're currently making the cars with the 2170 cells, and Drew Becklino will address some of the 4680 questions later in this call. But it is worth emphasizing that we have enough 2170 cells to satisfy all vehicle production for the remainder of the year. So we're not dependent on 4680. 4680 will be important next year, but it is not important this year. That said, we have installed the second generation of manufacturing equipment for 4680 cells in Texas. And And even at our established factories like Fremont and Shanghai, we continue to expand capacity. Regarding Autopilot, we have now deployed FSD Beta with city streets driving capability to over 100,000 owners. They're very happy with the capabilities of the system, and will continue to improve it every week. We've now driven over 35 million miles with FSD Beta. That's more autonomous miles than any company we're aware of. I think probably it might be more than all other companies combined. And that mileage is growing exponentially. With regard to manufacturing and technology, about 5 or 6 years ago, we said we wanted to become the best manufacturer in the world, and that is somewhat counterintuitively to some people what will actually be, I think, our strongest competitive advantage. We're super pro manufacturing here at Tesla, and in general, we want to encourage other companies to be super pro manufacturing, and in general, I think it is a very important thing to do. We need to make stuff and make it efficiently, and that's manufacturing. So we've made a lot of advancements in manufacturing processes, as we now show in the shareholder deck. Thanks to the large castings, we make the world's largest castings. We reduced body welding robot count by 70% per unit of capacity in Austin and Berlin. So that's call it roughly a body shop that is roughly 3 times smaller than would normally be the case. And I should say it's also lighter, cheaper, and has superior noise, vibration, and harshness. So it's good on every level. But this journey is not over. We'll bring another level of simplicity and manufacturing improvements with Cybertruck, and future products that we're not quite ready to talk about now, but I think will be very exciting to unveil in the future. Our safety team also introduced a feature that tensions seatbelts if the vision system detects imminent collision, which has never been done before. So you can imagine that if you have a seatbelt that only tensions upon impact, you have very little time to tension the seatbelt. If you've got to be, the car has literally got to be crunching to trigger the seatbelt tensioner. But because we have vision, we can actually see that a collision is about to occur with 100% probability before it actually happens. And so we can tension the seatbelts, and we can even adjust the airbag deployment because we can see, not just feel. This is a fundamental safety advantage that Teslas are now able to offer. And this is also an over-the-air update. So this is something that will be in place in all cars that have at least AP3 hardware. In conclusion, we exited Q2 with a stronger production rate than ever before. Our team continues to focus on Cybertruck production readiness and some future platform design. We are expecting to be still expecting to be in production with the Cybertruck in the middle of next year, and we're very, very excited about that product. I think it might actually be our best product ever. Let's see, and FSD Beta is on track to be released for all of North American customers before the end of this year, and hopefully, if we get regulatory approval, we'll also be releasing it hopefully in Europe and some other parts of the world. We're hosting our AI Day in a few months. I think people will be amazed at what we're able to show off in AI Day. So basically, there's a tremendous amount to look forward to in the second half of this year. And I want to thank all of our employees and suppliers for their super hard work during these challenging times. Super appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Zach has some opening remarks as well.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I want to start by congratulating the Tesla team on excellent execution during the second quarter. Although our production volume reduced sequentially due to COVID-related shutdowns in Shanghai, we made substantial progress in nearly every area of the business, and in particular, our global vehicle production rate as we exited the quarter. Our Fremont factory, supported by our Reno team, reached new production records, The Shanghai factory resumed full production, and our new factories in Austin and Berlin are progressing well through their initial ramps. Additionally, our energy business achieved record gross profit with the highest solar volumes in many years. I want to personally thank the entire Tesla team, as I know many of you are listening. You've embodied a remarkable and relentless pursuit of excellence in support of our mission. I also want to thank our suppliers for their support during another complicated quarter. On GAAP automotive gross margin, it declined sequentially to 27.9%. The temporary decline in Shanghai production volume meaningfully impacted margin, including idle capacity and factory restart costs, and also had implications on the mix of regional deliveries. Additionally, as discussed on previous calls, we are working through the ramp inefficiencies of our new factories, which are progressing well, but have had an impact on margin as those factories come online. While we continue to see a benefit from higher pricing flowing through, which experienced some foreign exchange-related headwinds, our cost structure continues to experience cost increases from inflation, commodities, and logistics. The energy business progressed well in Q2, aided by alternate solar supply coming online and progress on unit economics. Our storage business remains component constrained on both Powerwall and Megapack, which we hope will alleviate to some extent in the second half of the year. We are greatly appreciative of the patience and flexibility shown by our customers while we work through these challenges. Within operating expenses, Austin and Berlin related startup costs have wound down as these factories have moved into production and their costs are now reflected in automotive COGS. Additionally, we converted a majority of our Bitcoin holdings to fiat for a realized gain, offset by impairment charges on the remainder of our holdings, netting a $106 million cost to the P&L included within restructuring and other. We also incurred restructuring charges related to targeted staffing reductions.
Yeah, actually, it should be mentioned that the reason we sold a bunch of our Bitcoin holdings was that we were uncertain as to when the COVID lockdowns in China would alleviate. So it was important for us to maximize our cash position given the uncertainty of the COVID lockdowns in China. We are certainly open to increasing our Bitcoin holdings in future. So this should not be taken as some verdict on Bitcoin. It's just that we were concerned about overall liquidity for the company given COVID shutdowns in China. And we have not sold any of our Dogecoin.
We still have it.
We still have our Dogecoin.
Despite these challenges, we were still able to achieve one of our strongest operating margins of 14.6%. Our free cash flows were impacted by working capital related to the Shanghai factory shutdown. However, we expect this will show as a benefit in Q3 as our working capital related cash flows restabilize. As we look ahead, and as Elon mentioned, we are positioned for a record-breaking second half of the year. We're quite excited about this. A couple things to keep in mind as we progress. Austin and Berlin ramp inefficiencies will continue to weigh on our margins for the balance of the year. However, the impact should reduce as we increase ramp. Second, as we've mentioned before, we expect to continue to see recognized global pricing to increase as our backlog flows through. However, macroeconomic related cost increases will also continue to be part of our story. And finally, despite losing more builds in Q3 than expected, we're still pushing to reach 50% growth this year. This target has become more difficult, but it remains possible with strong execution. And as Elon mentioned, no more force majeure events for the balance of the year.
A lot of force majeure in the last several years. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now let's go to the questions from investors. The first question is, Chinese EV manufacturers seem to be doing a better job than their Western competitors, excluding Tesla, at innovating in software and design. How can Tesla make sure the company is staying ahead of those manufacturers, both within China and outside of China?
Well, right now the best Chinese EV manufacturer is Tesla China. We're actually doing the best thanks to our incredible team in China. But I have a lot of respect for the Chinese car manufacturers and EV manufacturers in particular. I think they will be a force to be reckoned with worldwide. They're they're smart and they're hardworking, and I think anyone who is not, any company that's not as competitive as them will obviously suffer a market share decline. So I would say we have a lot of respect for the car companies in China, and then their capabilities. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is, when will Tesla have a unified vector space for both static and moving object network? Will this be a V11 or later version? If the latter, can you explain what makes it a difficult problem in layman terms?
Okay. This answer will be understood by 0.001% of the audience, I think. Most people don't know what a unified vector space would actually mean. It essentially would be if you can take, if instead of knitting together static and dynamic objects in C++, if they can be knit together at the neural net level, then you don't need to reconcile them within C++ heuristics. That is an architecturally better way to that's the most desirable outcome. I think it's probably not necessary to achieve full self-driving, but it would be a slight improvement in the efficiency of the self-driving, and it's certainly something we want to get to. The sort of nirvana situation is you have surround video auto labeling of all static and dynamic objects, and you have then surround video inference with spatial memory as well. And that's, I mean, I think we're almost certainly there before the end of the year. Yeah, I'm not sure how many people would understand that, but
Sounds good.
I should say also we are also confident of improving the frame rate as we delete some of the legacy neural nets. We think we might be able to get the frame rate of all 8 cameras maybe up to 36 FPS, which is actually a lot of frames considering it's 8 cameras, but certainly comfortably above 24 frames, which is basically the movie frame rate of movies.
Thank you. The next question is, Elon recently tweeted about lowering prices once inflation cools down. Can you elaborate on what do you mean by cooling down and how aggressively the company will lower prices? More broadly, how do you think about the auto pricing long term?
Yeah, so since we have, there's a quite a long wait when somebody orders our car. In some cases, it's like six months. In some cases, it could be up to a year. We have to anticipate what the probable inflation rate is over that period of time. So that's what we're trying to do. When we see, when or if we see indications that the inflation rate is declining, then we would not need to increase our car prices. It's possible that there could be a slight decrease in car prices, but this is fundamentally dependent on macroeconomic inflation. It's not something we control. If I were to guess, and I wouldn't take this with a grain of salt, I think inflation will decline towards the end of this year. We're certainly seeing prices of commodities trending lower, but take it with a grain of salt. This is making economic prognostication is fraught with error. I don't know if you guys want to, do you want to say anything about?
Yeah, we're certainly seeing, I mean, it's kind of a whole spectrum. On the battery metal side, for example, the price of lithium has really shot up. It used to be $11 a kilogram to more than $80 a kilogram. But, it's not every situation is that bad. So it's kind of a spectrum.
Like carbon steel, aluminum,
Talk close to the camera.
carbon steel and aluminum has started trending down. we will see the benefits of it only probably later part of this year or early next year.
Yeah, but I think that's just like for most commodities, we're seeing a downward trend towards the end of this year or next year. Some commodities, the processing of lithium is insane. I'd like to once again urge entrepreneurs to enter the lithium refining business. The mining is relatively easy. The refining is much harder. So the lithium is actually a very common. There's like lithium pretty much everywhere, but you have to refine the lithium into battery grade lithium carbonate and lithium hydroxide, which has the extremely high purity. So it is basically like minting money right now. There's like software margins in lithium processing right now. So I would really like to encourage once again entrepreneurs to enter the lithium refining business. You can't lose. It's licensed to print money.
Thank you. The next question is, you made the right economic call before most on inflation when you diversified into Bitcoin. It has since shown it's not much of a hedge in the real world test in the last few months. How do you think about it as an asset over long term, and what do you need to see to change your view?
Well, Tesla's goal is to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy. We're not really cryptocurrency is a sideshow to the sideshow. So we're not cryptocurrency is not something we think about a lot. We think a lot about scaling production and accelerating the advent of sustainable energy, which the record heat waves around Earth serve to emphasize the urgency of that transition. So that is what we're trying to do, is make electric vehicles and solar and stationary storage battery packs, the three pillars of a sustainable energy future, which is like solar and wind for energy generation, stationary battery packs for storage of the solar and wind energy because of its intermittency, and then electric vehicles, the third pillar. And if those three things are solved, we have a sustainable future for civilization. And the fundamental good of Tesla, and the reason we're doing this, or certainly my primary motivation here, is to have the day of sustainable energy come sooner. That's our goal. We're neither here nor there on cryptocurrency.
Thank you. The next question on 4680. Elon noted that 4680 plus structural pack is not yet optimized. Can you please share the general path of 4680 and structural packs in terms of cost efficiencies when compared to the traditional 2170 pack? Will cost improvements be mostly due to scale, or do we need to solve some technical issues?
Should I start off?
Yeah, do you want to do the architecture?
Yeah. So structural pack, where we get dual use of the battery or the cells as structure and as energy storage, in the same way that an aircraft gets dual use of the wing as a fuel tank and as a wing, is, I think, unequivocally, from a physics standpoint, the superior architecture. So it's the A architecture. Now, because it is new, we'll start off getting, aspirationally a C within an A architecture. But the potential is there to get radically better and then unequivocally better than a battery pack, which is carried like a sack of potatoes. And
we've gained the perspective through putting our first structural pack in production that it is actually the A architecture.
Yeah.
Like before we did that, it was a hypothesis that was backed with a lot of modeling and first principles analysis, but now we've actually built it and are more confident in that assertion.
So exactly. So the structural pack, even the C and the A architecture, is beating the non-structural pack. And so over time, it will, with further refinement, be substantially superior to a car that is carrying a battery pack as though it is cargo. And this, like I said, it's very, very much very analogous to the early days of aviation, where fuel tanks were initially carried like cargo until they realized actually you should get dual use of the fuel tank as a wing and as a fuel tank, and that makes the planes lighter and better. And the same is true of electric vehicles.
And on cost improvements, are they due to scale or about solving technical issues?
Both.
Yeah, it's always both.
Yeah, I mean, but really, the two things that improve cost are economies of scale and tech and core technology. So,
Yeah, I think technical issues are not the right.
it's not technical issues, like
It's like
technology
getting to
advancement.
the optimal design, right? Like you always start with some excess. Some people might call it fat, but that's not really what you think it is initially. It's that you don't know how lean you can get it until you've done it a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, there's some platonic ideal of the perfect product where the atoms, you have exactly the right atoms in there in exactly the right position, and you asymptotically approach this platonic ideal, and but it takes a lot of effort over time to figure out actually what is the platonic ideal, and then to actually gradually approach that.
Yeah, I mean, you might need to create a new alloy, then you need to figure out how to cast it, then you need to ramp the casting machine of the new thing. So, like, yeah, but those take time.
Constant improvement is something we're used to here, and it's something like we've done with our vehicles and our designs since the beginning. I mean, even we were talking a couple of weeks ago, like the first version of the front casting that we made that went into the early vehicles is like
Model S days?
no, I'm talking about like our first Model Ys.
Oh yeah.
Since we've ordered more dies because we need more dies for more production, we've saved like 4 or 5 kilos of mass just in die iteration, and that's something we do at Tesla like quite regularly, and we'll continue to do. So like we're not happy with a C, like maybe we're at a C plus now because but like we got to keep going to get to
A B minus ish on the rear casting, but there's still tremendous room for improvement with the casting. So the casting is already way better than the rear body casting is already way better than the way it was done in the past, where you've got 120 different parts that are welded together or bonded together with different alloys, and then you have to put sealant in between all the various parts for water ingress and noise. So we're already way better than that with current casting, but there's still a lot of opportunities to reduce the mass of the casting and also extend the casting to include more parts, as well as adapt the rest of the vehicle for the fact that there's a casting.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, right? Like we're not just evaluating the pack in isolation either.
Yeah.
It's the pack plus the body, the integration. Do we have mass in the right places? Do we have the cost in the right places, and only just the right amount? And I think we've gone through one iteration loop. We're doing another one with Cybertruck. I mean, we're taking the learnings and doing the next version hopefully is a B plus.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
In the A architecture. That's certainly its target.
Thank you. The next question is, how do you feel the progress of FSD is going, and does Andrej Karpathy's leaving have any significant impact on timelines or potential progress?
Well, since Andrej was writing all the code by himself, naturally things would come to a grinding halt. Insert irony. So Andrej's obviously Andrej's awesome, and we have tremendous amount of respect for Andrej. He's decided to. I think he wants to contribute more to core AI at an academic level, and get back to coding individually. So, but we've got a team of about 120 people in our software AI group that are extremely talented, and I think we will I'm highly confident we will solve full self-driving, and it still seems to be this year. I know people, they're like, always says that, but it does seem to be it does seem as though we're converging on solving full self-driving this year.
Thank you. The next question is, how is the 4680 ramp going, and is Giga Texas producing cells yet?
Yeah, so we are making progress on 4680, but right now, as Elon mentioned, we are leveraging supplier cells, which we have in sufficient quantity to ramp Texas and Berlin. We expect to ramp total 4680 production to exceed 1K per week by the end of the year, hopefully before, well before. In Q2 at Cato, we fully automated powder conveyance for the dry anode electrode tool there, unlocking major increases in production and improvements in yields. Since March, because of that, Cato output has grown 35% month over month, each month since, and yields throughout the factory are already at targets in most areas and trending in that direction in a few others. We did feed learnings from Fremont cell and pack lines to Texas and Berlin. They aren't a carbon copy. Cell design was revved to unlock higher performance and manufacturing simplicity. Manufacturing lines were further integrated, and we insourced additional content. For these reasons, there are some new ramp challenges to overcome in Texas and Berlin. Specific to Texas last quarter, cell equipment was fully installed and commissioned, and we produced our first commissioning car sets of cells through the end of the line. Our target for Texas is to begin production this quarter and aim for Texas to be capable of exceeding Cato weekly output before the end of this year.
Thank you very much. The next question is on 4680 as well, but I think Drew has covered everything that was in the next question. So the following question is, with regards to the ramp of production in Austin and Berlin, how is the situation with regards to supply of semiconductors, battery cells, and other components? How about cost inflation impacting profitability of these other plants?
Smart. I can take that. So Tesla procures about 1,600 unique pieces of silicon from 43 semiconductor companies. So with a portfolio of that size, there are always challenges. Things are more stable on the latest generation chips. We still see some tightness in the older generation semiconductors, especially in the analog and mixed signal space. But we have line of sight to solve for the volumes being contemplated for both Austin and Berlin. And on the cell front, like Elon mentioned, we have a comfortable margin thanks to record output from our partners and have line of sight that matches the planned output from both factories. We've grown cell production significantly on a 12-month rolling basis and have long-term contracts with all our partners for key battery metals. So we don't see any major problems for the components, of course, barring unforeseen COVID-related shutdowns.
Okay. Just to add on the profitability part of the question, Q2 was our largest increase yet over the last handful of quarters on inflation and commodity-related increases to our cars. It's fairly evenly spread across the factories, given common suppliers or common issues that impact the broad supply chain. So I think I had mentioned before that we had been seeing increases over the course of last year. It ticked up in Q1, and then it ticked up again. The rate of increase was more in Q2. So, as we look through to the end of the year, what we're seeing is we don't think the inflation-related increases in Q3 will be as big as Q2. But as Elon had mentioned, there's uncertainty on pricing here. And we don't have full exposure, as Karan had just mentioned, on every component of cost, because we do have some contracts in place, but there are some spot buys as well, and some contracts being renegotiated. So, we're managing it with pricing and in partnership with our suppliers, but it does continue to be something that is impacting our financials.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last question is, when will the Cybertruck be officially available?
We're hoping to start delivering them in the middle of next year.
Great, thank you very much. And now let's go to analyst questions. The first question comes from Pierre Ferragu from New Street Research. Pierre, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi guys, thanks a lot for taking my question. I'd like to ask a question on 4680 and the structural battery pack. And I'd love to understand where you stand on the technology and efficiency and energy density roadmap that you described at the Battery Day. So what I'm trying to understand is, where do you stand on the architecture of the battery cell itself? How much silicon do you have in it? How much energy improvement have you achieved already so far? The reason I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And the reason why I'm asking that is because you have like very smart guys on Twitter who shared experience about trying to fully empty a Model Y from Texas, from Austin, and noticing behaviors and like recharging behaviors that suggested that maybe these cars had like very, very high mileage, very high range, and were like artificially limited in range in software. So I'm just kind of trying to understand how much of an edge you're building at the moment with the 4680 and the structural battery pack on range.
Yeah, let me try to provide like a super straightforward answer. Like, as Elon mentioned before, our priority was really on simplicity and scale during the initial 4680 and structural battery ramp. So we weren't like putting all the bells and whistles in from day one, because if so, we would be sort of suffering under a string of series miracles that we would need to achieve to get going. But as we attain the manufacturing goals that we've stated, hit the ramp that we need to hit next year, we are certainly planning to layer in new material technologies and higher range structural packs. Like we're not like holding back goodies for some rainy day or something like that.
Yeah, maybe another way of putting it is that our focus right now is on basically dozens of little issues that inhibit the production ramp of the 4680. Some of the more challenging ones have been feeding the anode and cathode material, because we were using this revolutionary dry electrode process. But when something's revolutionary, it's a lot of unknowns that have to be resolved. So we're confident of resolving those unknowns, but it's very, very difficult. We're making rapid progress on that front. So the first order of business is really get the basics right, get to high volume and high reliability, and then very rapidly iterate within that to enhance the energy density and reduce the cost of the cell.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I'd say we are highly confident of a good outcome. It's the exact counterpoint of that is perhaps it is of some debate, but the outcome is not.
Yeah, and specific to the dry process, we made a major advance this past quarter in Cato that the team is really excited about, and congrats to the team for achieving that.
But I should also emphasize that it is not as though Tesla intends to displace our suppliers of battery cells. The Tesla battery cell production is in addition to what our suppliers can do, and we want our suppliers to grow their battery output as fast as they possibly can, and that goes for the entire supply chain. The fundamental rate limiter for Earth transitioning to sustainable energy is how fast can you grow lithium-ion battery output per year. This is the fundamental rate limiter for Earth transitioning to sustainability, because you need the batteries for two of the pillars of sustainability: the stationary storage and for vehicles.
Yeah, and I just want to stress that a lot of these, higher energy density technologies are not necessarily scalable. I mean, most of them are not scalable from what I've seen. And so like focusing on them is a distraction from the mission. Like it really is, how do we scale as fast as possible? And, we're taking these risks that we've discussed at Battery Day, and our plan is as we de-risk them and they are successful, we want to bring them back to our partners so that they can go faster too, because that's all on the mission, right? Like, how do we accelerate?
People often ask me if is some breakthrough needed in battery technology for the world to transition to sustainability. The answer is no. Even if there was zero technology breakthroughs, literally zero, from where the technology is right now, we could fully transition Earth to sustainable energy. The issue is very much the rate at which the entire supply chain, from mining to refining to cell production, how fast can that grow? It's growing fast, but the faster it grows, the faster we transition to a sustainable energy economy.
This is actually a great, exactly where my follow-up is. So, Elon, you always mention, this 50% per annum sustainable growth target that you guys have, and so my question here is, when we see like the difficulty regarding like commodities, raw materials, swinging prices, I'm kind of wondering, as you are planning for this 50% per annum growth, if we stand today over the next 5 to 10 years, how much of that do you feel you've secured through your work at entering into long-term contracts and things like that? And you were calling for entrepreneurs to go into the lithium business. And so does that mean you don't have enough lithium secured to grow 50% per annum over multiple years? And what's how much of that is secured today, and how fast can you improve that, basically?
Well, I think it's very difficult to predict anything 10 years from now. I hope civilization is still around, frankly. I would count that as a win.
It's not that funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Every day.
Hopefully we haven't had World War III by then.
Or the Earth isn't burned up.
Yeah. We do see constraints in refining of the materials necessary for lithium-ion batteries. I do want to emphasize it is not due to a scarcity of the raw material. In the case of lithium is one of the most common elements on Earth. It's pretty much everywhere. But refining of the lithium into ultra-high purity battery-grade lithium hydroxide and lithium carbonate is quite difficult and requires a massive amount of machinery, and it's a hard thing to scale. It is also difficult to create the anode and cathode. I think my guess is maybe 2/3 of batteries will be iron phosphate, or maybe iron phosphate with some manganese. And there's a ridiculous amount of iron on Earth. In fact, Earth is a little bit of trivia. Somebody says, "What is Earth made of more than anything else?" Iron. Iron is the number one ingredient of Earth by mass. Number two is oxygen.
Yeah, which is wild, but yeah, oxygen's
basically rust. You stuck them together. We're a rust ball. That's almost 2/3 of Earth, I think, is rust. We are like a rusty ball bearing, with a little bit of other stuff. But plenty of lithium. So anyway, there's not like a shortage of materials.
Yeah, I mean, but another thing on that LFP thing is it isn't just that there's more access to material that way. The actual refining process is less capital intensive to make a good LFP cathode. And so it's not just scalable on the resource side, it's scalable on the refining side.
Absolutely. To be clear, there's no fundamental barrier here. It's simply a rate question. Like at what rate can you scale production?
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing a very rapid increase in battery production, and in the whole supply chain. If you were to say today, what are concerns? A few years down the road, I would say one of the concerns is the machinery to refine the critical ingredients of lithium-ion cells. So the lithium itself, and then the cathode, which I said, will be mostly iron phosphate, perhaps with some manganese. I think almost all stationary storage will be iron phosphate, and then you really just need nickel chemistry for long range vehicles and like aircraft and that kind of thing.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is, we're working with our suppliers to ramp their capability as quickly as possible. And it's not like we have a problem in the next year or two, to specifically to your question. But when we look 10 years out, we need to do more to accelerate the growth. And that is why we are making our own investments. Like, we are building a cathode facility here in Texas. The steel is going up. You can see it in the flyovers. We're working on lithium refining activity as well ourselves, because the best way to learn how to accelerate something is to do it yourself. So these are the things we're doing to move it all forward.
Yeah, I mean, if our suppliers don't solve these problems, then we will. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question comes from Emmanuel Rosner from Deutsche Bank. Emmanuel, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a question on your vehicle demand and then a quick follow-up on supply. First, on the demand side, are you seeing any sort of pressure in the order book or the pace of new order, or any sort of like slowdown as a result of the pressures that the consumer is experiencing? Are you worried about it in light of your view of the risk to the economy that I think you expressed, Elon?
Well, right now our problem is very much production. So we have long leads on, as anyone can tell if they order our car. If you order Model Y, it will arrive sometime next year. So this is clearly not an issue for many months for us. Our problem is overwhelmingly that of production. So, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe just two things to add. Specifically on your question, are we seeing a macroeconomic impact on our demand? Not that I can tell. Maybe a little, but
some maybe, but it's
not material. The second thing, to Elon's point about backlogs, we have a very long runway with very long lead times here. I mean, certainly the world is uncertain, and we'll have to see where things go with commodity prices, how quickly we're ramping production, what the state of the world looks like at some point next year. But the demand is not something we spend really any time talking about.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe just once again worth mentioning that there is a difference between value for money and fundamental affordability. Because sometimes people say, well, if you got all this demand, why don't you just raise the price to some, double the price or something? And this is usually expressed by somebody who's rich. So there's even if you rail value for money to infinity, if consumers do not have enough money to buy it, even a product where the desirability is railed to infinity, they simply cannot buy it. So this is why you cannot just raise prices to some arbitrarily high level, because you pass the affordability boundary and then the demand falls off a cliff. So I do feel like we've raised our prices, or we've raised our prices quite a few times. They're frankly at embarrassing levels. But we've also had a lot of supply chain and production shocks, and we've got crazy inflation. So, I'm hopeful. This is not a promise or anything, but I'm hopeful that at some point we can reduce the prices a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay,
Emmanuel, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, my follow-up was actually on the supply side. So it was very encouraging to see that you're quantifying your current installed capacity at basically already in excess of 1.9 million units installed currently. How quickly do you think that you can fill that capacity?
Well, I mean, I think we've got a good chance of exiting this year at 40,000 vehicles a week.
Yeah, I mean, our internal plans are to have the capacity utilized by the end of the year. It takes time to ramp there. it'll be a challenge. There's a lot that needs to happen to get there, but that's what we're working on.
Yeah, we've had many 30,000 car weeks already, so I think a 40,000 car week is within reach by the end of this year.
Shanghai and Fremont, as we said last month, were record production, and they're really firing. It's a bad term. Doing really well.
Yeah.
But then Austin and Berlin are coming on strong. Theoretically, they also had record quarters last quarter. And if we ramp them to the capacity shown in the deck, by the end of this year, we'll be at that rate.
Yeah. But there's always a lot of uncertainty, and like in the production ramp looks like an S curve. And that intermediate part of the S curve it's very difficult to predict that with high certainty. But the end part of the S curve, you can say, I think you can have a lot more certainty, and so that's why I'm, confident we'll get to 5,000 cars a week at in Austin and Berlin. By the end of this year or early next year, and probably, but not certainly, 10,000 cars a week at both locations by the end of next year.
Thank you. The next question comes from Colin Rush from Oppenheimer. Colin, go ahead, please.
Thanks so much, guys. Could you talk a little bit about the pricing strategy around FSD and as you get closer to this full functionality rolling out and the increased cycle times, how you see that evolving through the balance of this year and into 2023?
Yeah, we will. We will increase the price of FSD sometime later this year. I think, probably just before we go to wide beta. Where wide beta is, anyone who wants to use the beta software with all the caveats associated with that can use it. Then it would make sense to increase the price of FSD. The value of FSD is, I think, extremely high and not well understood by most people. It is basically currently ridiculously cheap, assuming FSD materializes, which it will.
Great. And then, sorry to belabor a little bit on this battery material side, but in terms of some of the suppliers and the contaminants, can you be a little bit more specific around some of the elements that you guys see in some of your supply chain that can prove troublesome on yields for the 4680s, particularly around lithium and potential contaminants in either the hydroxide or the carbonates that you guys end up seeing real issues with as you move into production?
Yeah, I don't really think we have anything to comment on. Yeah, the purity specs of lithium on this call right now. Yeah,
contaminants for the 4680 are not a factor. This is not an issue.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question comes from Tony Sacconaghi from Bernstein. Tony, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you for taking my question. I have two as well. In response to the question around demand, I think, Zach, you said maybe a little, and Elon, you said maybe some indication that you might see some pressure on demand. And I'm wondering if that is really just speculation or whether there's any empirical data that you saw in the last month, whether it be cancellations or order lead times, that led you to make that comment. I think anecdotally, if you squint, the lead times have gotten a little lower over the last 4 months in both China and the US. That's really the only visibility investors have. So I'm wondering if you could maybe elaborate on whether that's really just your, sort of anticipating there could be some impact because of high prices, or whether there is something anecdotally or quantitatively that you could point to, please.
I think we've said this now for many years, and it is proven true. Tesla does not have a demand problem. We have a production problem, and we've pretty much almost always had it with very rare exception. It's always been a production problem. I think that will remain the case.
Also, there's a denominator and a numerator, and like,
If you increase production,
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As we increase production, more demand is needed. Obviously.
Well, it's more just like you can't look at the backlog and state much about demand because we're doing a lot on the other side to change the production. But
We're trying to make the backlog lower, not longer.
by building factories and building more companies.
We don't want a long backlog. That's annoying. It'd be like go to a restaurant and you order a burger and you have to wait 3 hours. I'm like, that's annoying. You want to get your burger right away. Same with the car. So we want the lead times to reduce.
Okay, thank you. Now, I was just trying to follow up on the fact that you both said that maybe you were seeing demand be impacted a little bit, and that was the spirit of the question. Maybe
Yeah,
I can.
I can say like we don't have like because we see daily orders from around the world for our cars. It's actually it is like a mood barometer of people's confidence in the economy. But one can't read too much into it because things can vary a great deal from one day to the next. Consumer sentiment is all over the map. So it's manic. I was manic depressive, frankly. But we have so much excess demand that it's really just not an issue for us. It might be an issue for some other companies, but it is not an issue for us.
Okay, thank you. Elon, I'm just wondering a question for you. Tesla's obviously changed dramatically in the last 3 years from, near life or death to a company with, consistent cash flow and industry-leading margins. I'm wondering if you can comment on your personal role in the company and whether you see that changing in terms of your role or your commitment and time spent at the company over the next 3 or 4 years. I think you said a few calls ago you wouldn't be on calls and unless there's something unusual, and you've been on every call since then. I'm wondering how
There's been a lot of unusual things. Let's face it.
So I'm just wondering about
basically, if there's only good news, I won't be on the call. but if you have like a tough situation like COVID shutdowns in China, then I think I'll be on the call. If relatively speaking, there's bad news, and if all we have is good news, then I won't be on the call. But I'm committed to the long term. I mean, I'll work at Tesla as long as I can usefully advance the cause of sustainability and autonomy.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. The next question comes from William Stein. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Great. Thank you very much for taking my question. Elon, in the past, you've given some assessment as to the likelihood that you can achieve success in some of the more interesting AI-oriented efforts, not only FSD, but also Dojo and Optimus. Perhaps you can give an updated view on those.
Well, I don't want to steal thunder from AI Day. So I think we'll have some exciting news on AI Day that I think will be further ahead than probably most people think. But I don't want to. I'd love to answer you, but I think we'll leave that excitement for AI Day.
Okay, and perhaps a follow-up if I can. We've heard a lot from others, and certainly to some degree from you all, about the shortages in semiconductors in particular. We have seen some, big important customers of that type of product decide to sort of, leverage the ecosystems that exist to make some of their own in those categories. I'm wondering to what degree you're doing that. It's outside of Dojo in terms of the, I guess on the inference side, you're certainly doing that in the car. But what about sort of the more mundane areas like microcontrollers and the like? Is there any internal effort to to improve supply chain and maybe improve other performance aspects?
Well, there's a lot we've done. We've been working with our suppliers a lot. We don't currently intend to make chips ourselves. We don't think there will be a need to make chips, but we have been working closely with a number of suppliers. Actually, just met with one of our key supplier CEOs right before this call. We had a great meeting. They're going to make major investments in some of the critical chips and components that we need in the car. And I've actually like take a moment to thank our key suppliers once again for supporting us through difficult times, and they really went above and beyond to support us. So to all our suppliers out there, thanks very much.
Yeah, and I guess just maybe we don't talk about it very often, but we do have a lot of custom silicon in the vehicle already. Microcontrollers, yes, some. Battery management, yes, some. Power electronics, yes, some. So we try to go after where there's actually a technical advantage. And in the future, I think we're going to look at where there's a supplier advantage as well, even supply chain advantage.
Even now, where there's supply chain issues with our tier ones and tier twos, Karn and Roshan get into it with us on the engineering side, and we find solutions, whether it's alternative chips or, changing the entire structure of the stack to make it work. And I think that's an advantage we have that many other OEs just simply cannot.
Yeah, I think Tesla is as much a software company as it is a hardware company, and so one of the ways that we've been able to address supply chain issues on the chip front is by rewriting our software to be able to use different chips, or in some cases achieve dual use of a single chip, which is even better. And actually, quite frankly, the chip shortage served as a forcing function for us to reduce the number of chips in the car.
Simplify.
Yeah, it turns out we had more chips than we needed. So, but it's a testament to our software team that we're able to roll a new chip into the car and write a whole new batch of software for that chip, and without interrupting production.
Yeah, and our goal is, as we mature and scale the platforms, to integrate more functionality into fewer chips. Like that is the way that it's gone with laptops and phones. It's going that way in cars, and we're trying to do that wherever it makes sense to do it.
Yeah,
as quickly as we can.
I mean, from a supply chain standpoint, what do you think about chips and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, from a high level, instead of designing and building our own microcontrollers, we're partnering with key partners that understand the architectural requirements, and they'll take the specs and design something for us. We've done that, to your point, Drew, in the battery sensing space. We've got some application-specific ICs. But yeah, integrating, reducing the number of components, it makes the supply chain easier, but it also makes the reliability of the end product better because there's less failure points. So that's always been the mantra.
At times, we also go at the wafer level and try to consume less to achieve the same functionality. So that's something also that we've been looking at in some of the constrained modules that we've faced in the last 6 months.
That's good.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate all of your questions. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have this quarter, and we will speak to you again in 3 months' time. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Bye.
There we go. And I'm back. We have some fun, don't we, guys? That was a great earnings call in the chat. Nigel was saying that that's one of the better... Was that Nigel who said that? That it was one of the better conference calls we've had in a while. And I agree. It was wonderful. Any questions for me before I do something else with my day? Because this has been a long day. Yeah, good call. It was a good call, Daniel. It was a good call. I had fun, and what I said in the chat was that I think Elon had fun. You know, he says he's only on the call when it's bad news, and I disagree. I disagree. I think it was all very good. Reset this before I goof something up. Yeah, it was. I think the questions were better than average. I think Wall Street's finally catching on to not ask really terrible questions. Was a little annoyed that we got two of the same matching Cybertruck when, but in case Elon had forgotten it's important, Cybertruck when. Yeah. MD Hofsey says he wants to go over the numbers versus the predictions. That's something we can work on. Maybe not today, though, because I am at over 2 hours on air, and my brain's getting a little fried. Yeah. Nigel says they evaded many bits of info. Questions were not all deep. The one that got me was, what are you going to do to stay ahead of Chinese innovation? And his answer was, boy, China sure does innovate, doesn't it? What? That's not an answer. One thing I'd like to point out is a lot of people who despise the Musk man look at the headlines where it'll say, Elon's company did this, and they'll say, it's not him, he's not the one doing it. Why doesn't he ever say thanks? And by the way, guys, he says thanks constantly to everyone involved. The suppliers, the workers, the designers, the competition, the everyone, absolutely everyone. It's the guy who wrote the headline you have a problem with. The guy who said, Musk's company did. Musk's rocket did this. And you know why they said that? Because you dumb bastards keep clicking whenever it says it. So if you don't like them having that attention, don't give them that attention. It's so easy. I'm not a fan of a certain family that is on television too much and has no talent and no position being there. So much so that I won't even say their names. So I just ignore them. And on social media, I put up a little filter so that if anything has their name in it, it just doesn't show up. My life is not impacted negatively in any way. Can you imagine dedicating so much energy to hating someone who doesn't know you exist and doesn't care, but is still trying to, in small ways, make your life a little better? Wow. What a way to go through life. Guys, yeah, thanks for hanging out. Maybe he was saying China copies without saying it. Everyone copies. Did you see the Rimac is going to start using mega castings and a structural battery pack? That sounds familiar. It's just a good idea. Car with a K. Yes, John? Yes, John the Clampets. John, I know you on Twitter, don't I? If you're the John I'm thinking of, I'm so impressed that you're here. I think, don't I know you on Twitter? Or am I thinking of someone else? Anyway, so let's see. Do another show. That would be funny. It is not a political family, John. I don't deal with politics. Don't have time for it. It's too much work. Too stressful. I can't impact it. I vote. I appreciate people who do vote. I think informed voting is important. But this isn't a political channel, and I'm glad it's not because that just sounds like work. Okay. Ideas. Okay. Making it happen. That's Tesla. Yeah, I agree. The Clampets. Yeah, that Hollywood family, they moved to Beverly Hills. Mm-hmm. Oh, very fun. Okay. I'd like to give a very tiny shout out to my patrons. Now, you know the deal. These guys are the ones, these are the real heroes. And I mean it because YouTube doesn't pay very well. And these guys help me out. But, you know, you don't have to financially help me to help me. And I appreciate all of you for being here. Either way, thank you guys so much. Make sure I don't have any lingering ones. It's the redacted family. As far as my social media is concerned, it is. Yeah, John's glad it's not political, too. Yeah, I don't have time for that, man. It's too stressful. Yeah. Okay. Come on, Nigel. You're pushing. You're pushing. All right. So what did I miss or misunderstand? Because I'm sure the replay crew on this will be robust. I'm sure this one won't just fizzle to nothing afterwards. But if for some reason you're on the replay crew, leave a message below. I would like you to say that, because that's improbable, but I'd like to know. Did I just miss it all on your channel? Digiblade Canada, you didn't. Just start it over and watch it, because my coverage was better. We had fun. I shut my camera off for a couple minutes, and I was informed by the good folks in the chat that I'm half the fun. And I have to agree, I am half the fun. Yeah, Daniel Carlson watches me so he can be a little more lazy. Beers on me if you're in Utah. Yeah, I've only been through Utah once, on the way back from Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, where I visited the Virgin Galactic Spaceport. It was hot out there. And that little the visitor center, they're used to people like me. I went up and I said, "It's all right, we film." And he's like, "Oh yeah, do you need me to turn off the music for copyright reasons?" I was like, "Buddy, you have met my kind." Stock is up slightly after hours. I think we'll see a different shift tomorrow. I hope. Yashu does great work. I like him. I've talked to him, not directly, but a number of times, and I think he's also a speaker at Evolution 22 in Vancouver, because he's local there. So we shall see. We shall see. I sound like a Canadian magic? A magician? Canadian magician? I grew up close to Canada. Close. 2 hours away, maybe? 2 or 3? Oh, yeah. I never turned my fan back off. That's all right. I don't think... Can you hear it? Can you hear my fan? Stock will plummet on the good news. I think this good news was sufficiently good that it won't plummet, but it may trade flat. All right. Hour and 21. That's quite enough. That's quite enough. So what did I miss or misunderstand? Leave me in them comments, you guys. Stay tuned, stay juicy, all that good stuff. And I'll try and get the cathode update video out in the next, maybe tonight or tomorrow, but I got to take a break and decompress a little bit. Take care, you guys.